In our exclusive survey for Lawless Britain week, the vast majority of people agreed children's behaviour has got worse in the last 20 years and poor parenting is the number one reason why. So we'll take a look now at the results. So here we are on Lawless Britain week on Channel 5 and just getting a bit of data. So let's just have a look here. 74% of people, of Brits, think children's behaviour has got worse in the last 20 years. So then we ask the big question, why has children's behaviour got worse? So this is the key question. If it has, why? And let's go through. The most popular answer, 57%, said poor parenting is to blame. The next most popular answer, 38%, increased screen time and use of technology is addling their brains. 36%, so 1 in 3, say they lack authority. They don't respect police and so on. 33%, 1 in 3, say schools are to blame for not getting the kids to behave. 27% say social media violence, 22% say violence on TV and movies. So that's all of a piece there. Violence they're seeing. 19% say they don't get any exercise in these days. They're all sitting around in front of the TV. And then mental health is mentioned by 17%, saying it's got worse. So that's the whole array of reasons being given for why the behaviour's got worse. But I want to show you this. Just as a counterpoint, this is a guy called Paul Ferry. He collects old newspaper cuttings. In 2022, we had the same headline. In 2001, going to church these days is like going to a picnic. Where's the respect gone? 1997, children are ruder. 1982, children are ruder and nastier. 1978, kids are disrespectful. 1964, before I was born, things have really changed since we came up. Let's go further back, just after the Second World War. Recently, I was criticised because I told a child off for not standing when I came into the room. They're not polite anymore. 1921, youth of today is rude. This is now 100 years ago. Girls are slangy. 1911, sequence of bad-mannered children and ill-mannered youths. 1906, you want to go back to the 1800s? Old-fashioned manners have gone. 1896, children's manners have gone, right? 1881, to the editor, they're not reading the Bible anymore. 1877, disrespectful children, moral degeneracy, again, things about not standing up. And the last two here, 1853, the spirit of true politeness among the juveniles is decreasing. Politeness, I don't mean affected gentility. And 1829, the earliest we could find. From my childhood, I always delighted to collect fragments of long times past, and then a long article where it says girls were never saucy. Saucy. So we've complained about this since the beginning of time. But maybe it is worse now. Airing on 5 tonight is The Trial, a drama set in the year 2035 in which parents are held accountable for the crimes of their children.
Psychological, physical, emotional, financial, empathetic, or a combination of any of the above.
This is so incredibly offensive.
In the event that guilt is established, you will be charged pending further investigation.
Well, let's take as the premise that children's behaviour has got worse than it was in 1820.
Nothing to do with the children. Forget the children. If you have a child that is badly behaved, it is bad parenting.
OK, so you go with the majority answer there.
Definitely. And if you go through the clips as well, through the ages, bad parenting has existed. You could tell from those clips for a very, very long time. I feel it's got worse. We've now got to the stage where, in my day, children were frightened of their parents. We now live in a society where parents are frightened of their children. That has to stop. That actually, people think that society is responsible for the children. Your children is a representation of you and your parenting. That's how you got to see it, is that you have failed if your children have not become a really good member of society.
But hang on, Tessa, we did see lots of other incoming things, notably screen, social media, all of that.
Yeah, I think children now do inhabit different digital spheres, which means that the sort of common lingo between parents and children doesn't exist in the same way because we're occupying these very different cultural spaces. And sometimes parents aren't even aware of what their children are accessing or doing in a way that, say, previously we did all mill around, come in, there was only one telly in the front room and there was an argument over the control or who switched the channels. So there has been seismic changes in what we consume and the influences on us that are less visible or possible to control for parents. I mean, in the most extreme manifestations, you had the tragic case of Brianna Gay. Do you remember, who was horribly murdered in a park, I think in Warrington, by two 15-year-olds, Jai. And it transpired that one of those girls, one of this very young juvenile killers, was accessing content on the internet her mother had no clue about. So there is that risk, but it is way too easy to just blame the parents.
Maybe they're miserable. Maybe they behave badly because they don't have any hope. For some weird reason, they think life is bad and it's going to get worse.
You have to take the responsibility as a parent. If you do, look, I'll give you an example. My children were never allowed to go to a party if I didn't know the parents, if I didn't know the children. The children are given far too much freedom. I just think this liberal tendency that we have to allow children to be children and not accept that as parents we are responsible for every single thing our child does. If we don't know what they're doing.
Often when a child has done something terrible and the whole family are suddenly in the spotlight, the first thing that happens is that the father and mother are always separated.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that they are living what you might describe as disorderly lives. And I'm not judging at all, but things have gone badly. And I don't blame them for that.
Right, let's wheel back, because we've always had criminals, we've always had pilfering and violence and unpleasantness. If you wheel back to, say, the Victorian times, when there'd be loads of kids under one roof, a mother and father were together, but God knows what was going on.
Criminality.
Do you see what I mean? So just because some couples now live separately, it doesn't mean that the panacea, the solution to all ills, was to keep families together.
OK, after the break, we're taking your calls on whether parents are to blame for criminal kids, as Wilfred is saying, as our poll says. Later we'll be asking who won last night in the Champions League.
I have no clue.
There we are. Arsenal lost. Later we'll be asking for your verdict on the designs for the Queen Elizabeth Memorial. Which is your favourite? Maybe you like this one. That's this kind of AI image with the lily pads. It looks like something out of Epcot. But now we continue Lawless Britain Week on 5 with your calls on whether parents are to blame. This is the main place the finger is pointing here, on the parents. John in Shropshire, is it the parents?
Good morning, Jeremy and panel. Thank you for letting me allow you to hear my theory on this problem. I am 76 and I went to school in the 50s. It was the time when cane was administered for bad behaviour. Yeah. I had the cane on a couple of occasions. It didn't do me any harm. Now, what I believe is, since I saw this situation the day the cane was stopped at school,
really,
those children grew up with no discipline, and they had children, and they in themselves didn't discipline the children, and it's just gone on to this situation now.
Okay.
I'm not in agreement with capital punishment, but certainly my generation, I'm now 76, and my generation all had respect for elders, police, and such like.
Interesting. OK, John, thank you. I'm going to move on just because we've got very little time, but that's a very good thought. The cane would help us here. Nicola, I can hear Tessa sighing. Nicola in London, hello.
Hello, good morning, panel. Good morning, Jeremy.
Is it the parents, do you think?
It was a travesty that Arsenal lost, by the way. But yes, parents. OK, so it's a number of factors, right? So we have to look into the social, economical, environmental factors as to what would then propose for these children to engage in such activities. Now, a lot of the children from deprived wards would possibly be more aligned to engage in criminal activity because there is a financial constraint and strains in that household. And this is where the parent may turn a blind eye to things and items that the children will bring into the homes, i.e. their trainers, their tracksuits, because it will then take a pressure and a burden off of that parent. But there is a growing amount of young people whose images are appearing all over various social media platforms, suggesting that these children are missing. This is a part of a bigger picture where these children, they are missing from the family home. However, they are engaging in something called county lines. County lines is where these children
we know there's drug running. Yeah, no, I understand. Nicola, thank you. Cracking on. Sarah in Bromley, hi. Is it the parents?
Yep, it is the parents, I'm afraid.
Thank
100%.
you. Alex in Prestwick, is it the parents?
I wondered if Wilfred blamed the king for his son's behaviour.
Blame the king. Well,
Blame the king.
Well, you're heading into other territory there, Alex, but we're not. If it's the parents, it's the parents. It doesn't matter if it's the king or not.
It's not the parents. There's things like school. A teacher can send a kid down the wrong way. A teacher can send a kid down the right way. So there's environmental factors. There's resistance. And there's resilience that children need to have.
Yes,
and if a teacher's cruel, they can set a kid down the wrong road.
Okay, Tessa wants to come in.
What's really interesting?
We all remember a good.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Alex. There's quite a lot of interesting research about if you come from a loving base, you may stray, but you will probably be easier to win back into the fold. So a lot of teenagers want to push the line. You've got to know where the line is to spin on it or to spin on
Wilfred,
it.
do you agree with that?
Well, it's a teenage job is to rebel, but a parent's job is to be disciplined.
And if that parent provides a loving base, the teenager will come back in the end.
Thank you all for your calls. Sorry we had to whip through, but just because we're short of time because we were marking VE Day at the start of the programme. A reminder, you can watch the trial tonight at 9 p.m. on 5. Later we'll be asking you to vote for your favourite of the proposed designs for the new permanent memorial to Queen Elizabeth. We'll show you them all before we get your verdict. After the break, we're returning to VE Day.